Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to share with you 10 easy carnivore tames. So let's get into it. In at number 10 is the bulb dog, and this was first introduced on Arboration, and what a creature this is. And some may say it's not a carnivore, as you do tame it with mushrooms kind of to start off with, but its favourite food is mutton. The bulb dog is also a very useful carnivore as well, especially with its light pet ability, making Reapers and Nameless significantly debuffed against you, and I'm pretty sure Nameless won't even come out of the ground when in the presence of a lit up bulb dog. On Operation, definitely a worthy tame and a pretty easy one, and on other maps as well, it is just a really cute shoulder pet to have in your roster. In at number 9 is the Baryonyx. Now overall, the Baryonyx is not the easiest of carnivores to tame. There are definitely some much easier carnivores to tame on this list, but the Baryonyx is just so useful, and it isn't necessarily a difficult tame, which is why it is on this list, for obvious reasons. And especially if you have the next gun at your disposal, the Baryonyx will be one of the easiest tames in the game. But if you don't, you can just make a simple 2x2 trap with foundations and door frames. It will be extremely easy, and it will work every single time with no fail. The only fails you can really have is the creatures around you killing you and kind of destroying your tame in that sense. But once tamed, you have yourself an absolute beast of a caving Ark Dino. This creature is absolutely insane for caving, and yes, many people nowadays do use the Shadow Mane for caves, as it is again a small creature which can fit into most caves. The Baryonyx is still always my go-to, and unlike the Shadow Mane, it has that secret spin ability there, which was somewhat hidden by the subscribe button, but you will see it later on in this b-roll. And essentially what it does is it will stun enemies, and it can stun enemies up to the size of a megalodon. Sadly, it doesn't work on land, which would be great, but it is still great in the water, and it makes it really good for those underwater caves. And yes, the underwater caves with the artifacts and not the loot, but I'm sure most of you will know that by now. Next up, we have the Angler, and what a creature this is, and also what a forgotten creature the Angler is. And the Angler is definitely a creature which you should tame at some point, especially in the early to mid-game stages of the Ark game. Obviously not too early, as you do not want to be venturing into the ocean, I think, until at least you're in the high 20s or low 30s in terms of level. But what is the Angler used for, apart from just being a reasonable creature for travelling around Ark's oceans? Well, this thing is by far the best ocean creature out there for gathering silica pearls. There just isn't any other creature which can match its gathering ability. Obviously, there are going to be better ocean creatures out there, but silica pearls are an extremely useful resource, and it can do black pearls as well if black pearls do actually spawn ambiently on that map, which is a good thing as well, as again, silica pearls and black pearls are an extremely useful resource which later in the game you will need a lot of. So if you start gathering them early on, you'll definitely be thankful. Next, we have the Argentavis, and this is by far a kind of bread and butter Ark creature. You need this creature in Ark, and there's pretty much no questions asked about this creature. This is a creature that you just have to have, unless you're obviously on Gen 1 or Arboration, when flyers are not allowed. But on most maps, excluding the two which I just mentioned, the RG is always a tame which every Ark player should have. And the main reason for that is for its metal gathering abilities. Yes, it can't gather metal in itself, but it is still an insane resource of a creature which can be used to get to and from the mountains, and you can use a different creature like an Anki to actually gather up that metal. And this will have weight reduction on things like metal, crystal, and obsidian, so you can easily transport it from A to B with no weight problems at all. And also, the RG can pick up a wealth of creatures as well, making it pretty good for taming other creatures too, especially the Anki again, as you can pick up an Anki on the RG and then you can simply drop it into a trap. But if you do not have the RG available to you, the Anki is still a very easy tame, as you can just lead it into a little trap, the same with the Baryonyx, and the Anki is pretty slow, so you shouldn't have too many issues. Also, its saddle works as a portable smithy, and if it eats a dead body, it has absolutely insane regen. Now, the Beelzebufo. This is a creature which, again, is definitely really underrated among many people, and it is a creature which I really see so much potential in, and it is a creature which I use a lot for cementing paste gathering. It is an absolutely insane gatherer of cementing paste, and unlike things like beaver dams, it is a lot more reliable, as if you didn't know already, Ark is an extremely buggy buggy game, which hopefully will be fixed for ASA, but we never know, and sometimes beaver dams just will not spawn on the map, or will you just have to wait for them to spawn as the beavers haven't made them yet, or there just isn't any beaver dams on the map for whatever reason. There are just so many things which can go wrong with beaver dams on Ark maps, and the Beelzebufo is a sure way to get that cementing paste every single time, especially on the island as you have the insect cave, and if you have a good Beelzebufo that has enough health to withstand the absolute insanity of insects which are in the insect cave, then you'll have yourself a really good time on this thing. It is a very easy tame, which can just be tamed with the net gun again, or with a simple trap, and it may be able to be bowlered, but I'm not quite sure about it. Either way, if you can, tame yourself one of these frogs, you will not regret it. In at number 5 is the Crystal Wyvern, and this creature is more for the mid-game Ark players, as sadly it is unlocked behind a level wall. You have to unlock this thing over level 65, which in my opinion is a bit of a shame, but it is definitely an OP creature, and if you do a quick, cheeky, sneaky note run, you can actually get this thing pretty quickly, and it isn't too bad. And its taming method is probably one of the easiest on the list, but it is just a little bit further back, as that 65 level requirement is a bit steep for quite a lot of new Ark players. But the way how you tame it is a very simple passive tame using a type of crystal that you only find on Crystal Isles, and then you just feed it that crystal, and there's a spot where you can sit on its back, and you can just simply press the button every time it asks for it, and then in a matter of minutes, or maybe 10 to 20 minutes, you'll have yourself a fully tamed Crystal Wyvern. And if you go for the Blood Crystal Wyvern, you have yourself an even better creature, as its blood-sucking ability, I'm pretty sure, regens you, and also just deals so much damage to the enemy. Definitely really good wyverns to have, and compared to the traditional wyvern, they are significantly easier to tame, and they have all the wyvern benefits. Again, they have the insane speed, they can pick up all the same creatures. Obviously, their turning cycle isn't great, but they're wyverns, and also their damage and health is up there as well. Definitely creatures that if you're over that level 65 boundary, you should tame. Now, the Maywing. This creature was originally introduced on Gen 2, and many people still think that this is not a carnivore, but in fact it is, and if you have tamed a Maywing, you will know it's a carnivore, but I'm pretty sure it's an omnivore as well, so you can get away with berries, which is kind of where the mix-up of this list comes. Yes, it does still eat meat, which is why I'm including this thing on the list, and most things will say that this is a carnivore type creature, and you probably want to feed it meat anyway, as later on in these stages of the Ark game, meat is much easier to come by than any berry can be. And in terms of its abilities, this is by far the best travel mount you will find out there. There is just nothing that can match the absolute speed of a Maywing, and the efficiency too. They really are insane travel mounts. And also on top of that, they are great for raising and breeding your creatures up too, as they act as a portable feeding trough. Definitely one to be extremely useful, especially if you're more into breeding. And you can even steal enemy creatures that are being raised if you're into PvP and you're raiding someone's base, when the servers are obviously back up. And also, you can even gather berries with these things with the berry flop ability. Definitely a very good creature. In at number 3 is the Carno. Now, I can't forget the Carnotaurus, and in my opinion, this is one of the best carnivores out there, which is why it is so high on the list. It is just so easy and simple to tame. Again, with that very simple trap. You can just shoot it from afar, and then it will run into the trap, and then you just have to knock it out, and it's so easy, as long as there aren't other hostile creatures in the area, which sometimes it can definitely be the case, and sometimes it can go wrong. But if you do the right preparation, this will be a piece of cake to tame, and you will have no issues with it at all. And I urge you to tame one of these things. They are really good. Yes, they won't stack up to the damage of an Allo or a health of the Rex, but they have a mobility that the Rex can't have, and they also have the ease of taming, which the Allo doesn't really have as much, as the Allo does come in packs, and the Allo is significantly faster than the Carno. But the Carno still has a very decent amount of speed and a decent amount of stamina to go along with it. And like the Allo, it also has the bleed ability, as if you use its second attack, which is a headbutt, it will inflict the bleed to your creature which you are actually attacking, which again is an insanely useful ability for a carnivore to have. And the Rex and the Spino don't even have that ability. The Carno is definitely one to be tamed. It isn't difficult. I know it looks daunting if you have just started Ark, but trust me, in your first at least couple of days of Ark playing, if you can get up to the saddle level requirement, you'll tame yourself a really nice Carno. In at number 2 is the Reaper. Now many of you right now may think I am completely crazy. How is the Reaper an easy tame? It is one of Ark's late game tames, and it is one of the most difficult tames in Ark. So why is it in an easy carnivores list? And I'm not just going to say because it's an insane carnivore, as that still would not be an excuse for this thing being on the list. Well, the reason why is on Genesis Part 2, the Reaper is a really easy tame. But sadly, on all of those other maps that the Reaper spawns, you'll not have as good of a time. Which is why I'm not putting it in number 1, as the number 1 spot is reserved for a much more accessible creature that is actually still significantly easier to tame than the Reaper. Essentially, if you want to check out how to tame it on Gen 2, check Raj Clark's guide. You can just search up Raj Clark Reaper Easy Taming Gen 2, and it will come up right there, and then you can look how to tame one. If you don't have Gen 2, sadly, the Reaper is not going to be an easy tame for you. But this taming method is just such a good discovery that I couldn't discount it, and I have to have it on this list. And once tamed, obviously, the Reaper is an absolute beast of the carnivore, and it is one of the best creatures which you can get in Ark. Overall, just completely. The Reaper is insane with a wealth of attacks and a beastly amount of damage, and a really nice health stats to go along with it too. But before we get into number 1, I have a quick honourable mention, which is the Pteranodon. This is by far the easiest fly to tame, with its saddle unlocked at level 38. You really can't miss it. It's just a simple boulder and club tame. Definitely worth it. And finally, in at number 1 is the Deinonychus. Now, in terms of the taming method for this thing, you can basically not get simpler. Essentially, you go to the Chalk Cliffs on Valguero, which is a free DLC, by the way, so every Ark player, apart from, I think, Switch, and definitely mobile players, will have access to this thing as long as you obviously have Ark and you're not one of those people that just watch Ark top 10s because they're thinking of buying Ark. If you're one of those people, that is totally fine. In terms of the Deinonychus's abilities once tamed though, this thing has a wealth of them. Mainly its bleed ability, where it can latch onto larger creatures and just inflict all of that bleed damage. Definitely one which is extremely useful, especially because it can be used in bosses extremely effectively, which I'm pretty sure to this day no other carnivore can actually achieve. But also, the Deinonychus is an absolutely insane pack mount as well, just for general travel around the Valguero map, and one which is 100% worth taming. You just need the egg, and then you'll just need some torches, which are unlocked at an extremely low level. And again, talking about their travel, these things can zip across the map, and they can climb up any wall or vertical surface. These things can literally just parkour across any Ark map with absolute ease, and deal all the damage that you'll be required to do, which is an absolutely insane thing for a carnivore of this ease to tame to actually have. Definitely one 100% worth the tame. In at number 10, we have the Spino, and this is a creature which I think is an extremely underrated one, and it often gets forgotten about in most lists of some great Ark carnivores. And I know this isn't a great Ark carnivores list, this is the best late game island tames. Doesn't also mean that they have to be tamed in the late game. I am slightly twisting the definitions around a bit, but there's only really one creature which kind of falls into that slot, because it's technically really a mid-game creature. But there are so many creatures you can include on this list, but the Spino, in my opinion, had to be one of them. It is extremely mobile, obviously spawns on the island, that is a requirement for it to be on the best late game, the island tames. They do have to spawn on the map, and the fact with its mobility that allows it to spin 360 degrees on the spot, like, the Rex couldn't do that. Like, nothing could make the Rex do that. And also, they're really great in the water as well, and they have the hydration buff. And someone said recently that I accidentally said the Spinos had the bleed ability. If I ever said that, I am sorry, I didn't mean it. They do not have the bleed ability, but Rexes don't have the bleed ability either, so, you know. And actually, overall, these things do a little bit more damage than Rexes. And back in the day, like 2016, 2015 Ark, they were seen as more powerful than Rexes. Like, this one was just a bigger, more powerful carnivore, whereas the Rexes kind of taken all of the scene nowadays, and these things are pretty much forgotten about. And they can even go on their hind legs too. That was part of the TLC update that they had at some point, allowing them to deal even more damage. And they're really great carnivores, so I simply had to include them on this list, and I really hope that you agree with me on this one. Next up, we've got the Giga, and since this is an extinction, I can't put these things so high on the list, as for the islands you simply don't need this kind of creature, but I have to put it on here. Come on, the best late games of the island in terms of tames, the Giga, the Tiny Tim, has to be on here. It's an absolute beast, packing loads of damage, but the reason why I say you don't need it is it isn't allowed into boss fights on the island. The Rex is pretty much as powerful as you can get, really, for boss creatures on the island, and I know that's a really, really huge generalization, but, you know, we'll just go along with it. Either way, the Giga can't be allowed into boss fights, so it has no boss use. If this was Extinction, however, I'll put these things so high on the list. Like, man, they are so useful on that map. But they are still useful for gathering resources on the island, like hide and meat and all of that. And they're just really fun to ride on, to be honest. That's another great benefit. They are huge. The only real downsides being their terrible stamina and their rage meter, so it kind of gives them a percentage of their own health, so they don't technically have their true amount of health. Still, I had to include it on the list. Come on, it is the Giga. Next up, following the huge carnivore trend, we have the Carnodontosaurus, and this is kind of here for a similar reason. It's a big carnivore that deals a hell of a lot of damage, and it spawns where the Giga would spawn, and it's essentially just the Giga, but a little bit better in my eyes, so that's why it's slightly better on the list. It comes in at the number 8 spot instead of the number 9 spot, but the overall premise of the creature is pretty much the same. Again, big carnivore, deals loads of damage, it does all the same stuff. Yes, it has a blood rage, which allows it to do more damage than the Giga when full, and it doesn't have a rage meter, so it has its full health rather than the percentage of its health. And on top of that, its stamina isn't the most atrocious thing you've ever seen. They are pretty much the same thing, and I'm demonstrating its stamina leveling here, which isn't awful, but don't do that. Don't put all your levels into stamina on this thing. That is not what you want to be doing with this creature. Honestly, don't go near the stamina stat. Just leave it as it is. It is alright. It is fine. It is so much better than the Gigas, but if you really need it, get a stamina mutation. And although I would advise you to tame one of these things on Ragnarok, they can still be tamed on the island. I do have a taming guide video if you want to check that out. If I remember, there'll be a card at the top of the video. If not, there'll be nothing. Right, in at number 7, we have got the Rhinognatha, and I had to put this thing here. Come on, this thing can literally pick up Rexes. It does have to be warranted as one of the best late game the island creatures. And what a late game creature this is. Honestly, it's absurd, like its tame method and all of that. It only spawns on the islands under Lost Island, actually. And in normal, I'm still going to call it normal Ark, really, because ASA hasn't normalized itself in the Ark community. It's pretty much half and half, I think, at the moment, if the numbers are to be right. Because ASA, frankly, is too expensive, and on most things, it doesn't run very well. On the consoles, though, if you do get ASA on a console, you'll be fine with it. It will be a perfect experience for that console, and it will work. But on PC, I'm literally buying a 3090, which at the time of me recording this video is a £650 used card, let alone its price new, just to play a dinosaur game. But thanks to you guys, all of you watching these videos out there, I've actually been able to afford a card like that for my own personal rig. Currently, I still have the 2060 Super in it, but soon, in about, should be maybe 2 weeks from now, I'll have a 3090 in this thing, and then going on later in the year, I'm going to go for a 3950X and get some more RAM, because 16 gigs isn't really enough anymore, especially for ASA. It does actually recommend 32 gigs of the stuff. Also, if you noticed here, I've been, with the B-roll, I should have said, sorry, cancel my last point there. I've got technology stuff in my mind. Either way, the B-roll there has been showing you how to tame one, which is from my video of how to tame one. Again, if I remember, I will leave a card. If not, there won't be a card there, and you just have to look up Rhinognatha. But the tame method for the Rhinognatha is pretty much an exact copy of the Reaper taming method, so if you know that, then you'll be fine. But there's just a couple of extra steps, but it's not too complicated, but definitely is a late game tame because you're going to need a lot of resources for it. especially if you want 100% effectiveness. Next up, we've got the Tyrannus, and this creature is one of those tames where I just, like, I don't feel right if I have not tamed this thing on the island, and it's so essential for any kind of boss fights. I had to put it on this list. It has to be here, okay? This is the Tyrannus. It gives that buff to all of your creatures with the courage roar in the boss fight, and paired with a Daedon, it really does work. Although I found the Daedon isn't the most essential nowadays, and actually I have done quite a few things without the Daedon. I've just paid more attention and put my health into my Rectors or whatever boss creature I'm using. I admit a Daedon is helpful, so that is why I'm giving it a small mention here, although it is not making this list of the best late game Ark tames. And actually towards the late game it does become a lot more boss orientated, and you'll see that with the next 4 or so creatures. But actually the creature in number 1 is not boss orientated at all, and I wonder if you can guess it. If you do guess it before the number 1 slot, then put a time pin down from when you actually guessed what that creature is. Right, now at number 5 is the Baryonyx. Almost couldn't say 5 there. And luckily, now we have got all my personal life out of the way and all my tech life out of the way. We can now focus more on the dinosaurs, as I'm sure you don't need a full lecture right now on my life story. Either way, the Baryonyx is a pretty easy tame for it to be making this list, and it is the second easiest, I would say, on the list. The creature in at number 1, I'm going to give you another clue there, is... No, it is the easiest tame. The second easiest tame is at number 1. It's a very simple knockout tame, spawns in the swamp biome. I think you can find it in some other places as well. Definitely can, not just in the swamp biome. But if you really want to guarantee finding one, just head there. Make sure to avoid swamp fever. Either way, they're the best caving creature on the island, which is why I put them in this list. And they have a right click spin attack which can stun creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, which makes them pretty useful for underwater caves as well. And I know you can use Sarcos and Basilos and all of that, but for me the Barry does everything, and that is why I use it. Apart from the artifacts of the Skylord, that cave is far too tiny for pretty much any creature to fit in, unless you have a dung beetle for caving for some reason. Next up, we've got the Megatherium, and this is here for the chitin gathering, but mainly because of its insanity against the Broodmother boss fight on the island, and obviously that is why it has made the list, and that is why it is here. It is the best creature on the island for defeating the Broodmother, as it sort of gets a rage buff, you could kind of call it. Not in the case of what the Giga has, or... It's very similar to the Carnivores' Blood Rage, although doesn't really involve blood, and a sort of alpha buff glow to it, and essentially, once it's killed an insect, it will deal absurd damage to just everything, and I think there's a 500-second time or something like that. But considering the Broodmother constantly spawns spider minions at you, pretty stupid of it, I know. They will constantly replenish that buff, so that buff will always be active, and in the presence of a UT buffing them even further, you can have yourself a pretty insane army against insects, as I think it gives them damage, and then obviously some damage reduction on top of that as well. And again, you're going to get a lot of chitin from that Broodmother boss fight, so I guess if you want loads of chitin instead of going to the insect cave, just do the Gamma Broodmother a lot, or you can do the Alpha Broodmother or the Beta one. It doesn't really matter. Any Broodmother stage will work perfectly with this thing. No issues at all. They are the go-to for the Broodmother, which is obviously why I've had to put them on this list. And in a second you'll see what that buff looks like, and you know, maybe you can see what I mean by it looks alpha buff like. In at number 3 we have the Theri, and this creature had to be in here. Firstly because its saddle is unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
I know, that is a very nice one. Obviously makes this thing the perfect Ark creature. There is nothing better than it. But the reason for this creature being on the list is firstly its gathering abilities. This thing is insane at gathering all things fiber, wood, thatch, meat, hide, and it can't gather rocks, so I won't bother talking about those. And in my opinion, it's kind of more useful than you say an Anki and a Dodic, but I will give them a small mention here for gathering. They're not on this list, by the way, But the creature unit number 1 is extremely useful with a creature like the Anki and the Dodic. Have you got it yet? Have you not? Either way, the other use for this creature is that it is the best creature on the island for the dragon boss fight. The only downside being it's a herbivore, so for it to heal quickly, you will need sweet vegetable cake. This is where I would say a Daeton is very, very necessary to make sure these things stay alive during the boss fight, as then they can actually heal up quite quickly and effectively, because they don't have the ease of meat. A sweet vegetable cake is particularly expensive, and you probably can't get thousands and thousands of it, just like you would get thousands and thousands of meat. But the reason why they're so good at the dragon boss fight is the dragon has a particular buff or debuff for carnivores with its inflamed fire buff, whereas this thing's a herbivore, so it doesn't get that. In at number 2, we have the Rex, and I had to include this thing on the list. I'm not going to put it in at the number 1. By now, you probably should be able to tell where it's in the number 1 spot. Again, comment down that time code once you've figured out what the number 1 creature is. But either way, this creature, the Rex, obviously, is the go-to creature for any kind of boss fight. Yes, it does have a slight debuff in the dragon boss fight, and it doesn't have the buff the Megatherium has in the Broom on the boss fight. It still works for all of them, although I would mainly use it for the Megapithecus because that's the only other one. But actually, nowadays, I kind of tend to use Spinos more for that boss fight because they tend to not fall into the absolute death hole that's there in the arena, which is pretty annoying. But, you know, you can get around it easily with Rexes. It just, they tend to get stuck a little bit more, which is why I don't really like them for that. But there is no denying they are a really great boss creature, and with how easy they are to tame on ASA, it just has to be in at the number 2 spot. And it doesn't. I can't even speak anymore. Either way, it doesn't deserve any less, in my opinion, or any more. But before we get into the number 1 spots, just a quick honorable mentions. The Aloe is a pretty good boss creature. The Megalosaurus does definitely pack a punch as well. Creatures like the Sarco are pretty great water tames, although maybe not in the late game. You could still say they do definitely pack a punch. The Basilo is a great option for underwater caving in the late stages of the game, and a creature like a Thyla is always very nice to hand. But let's get into the tame in at number 1. In at number 1, we have the Argentavis. Have you guessed it now, by the way? 1433. It should be the latest that you've guessed what this creature is. Either way, this, in my opinion, is the best Ark late game tame for the island. It is just such a useful flyer for traveling from A to B. With cryopods, you can travel with any creatures which you want, and it is always my go-to flyer. And if flyer speed leveling was still a thing, then maybe I would go for a Quetz, but they are so slow, and also I still prefer the Argy in a lot of ways. Although it can't pick up as much as a Quetzal, it is faster than the Quetzal, and it has weight reduction on many resources like metal, crystal, and obsidian, making it a go-to for all of that metal farming. And metal is an essential resource in Ark Ready. To actually complete it, you'll want at least some flat gear, and you'll probably want a pump action shotgun, and obviously metal tools so you can make your gathering process as efficient as possible. And when paired with an Anki and a Dodic, you have yourself an even better creature. And they are so easy to tame. That's how they're being unlocked at level 68. Yes, just one off the perfect level. At least I'm pretty sure it's 68. It's either 68 or 62. It is somewhere in the 60 type of range, but before level 69, obviously. But yes, in my opinion, the RG is the best. Its saddle also acts as a portable smithy, and it has a really nice regen buff too. You really can't live on the island without an RG, in my opinion.
So thank you to my wonderful patrons Ekaterina Puchkova, Karina Thorne, Dominic Masijewski, and Ethan Tapia, who have all supported me through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. If you want to join this list, then go join Patreon or YouTube members, but thanks to all of these guys.